Welcome to Closing Conversations, a show for founders, leaders, and sellers who win together. I'm Max Notis. Today's guest is one of the original architects of customer success, and he's gotten the scars and receipts. Lincoln Murphy has spent the past 15 plus years watching what happens when sales and CS actually work together, and what happens when they don't. And he's got a simple thesis. Customer success isn't a support function. It's a growth engine if you design it that way. We talk about the most underrated moment in the entire customer lifecycle, the handoff, and why customers hate three things: surprises, unknowns, and repeating themselves. Then we get into one of my favorite concepts from this conversation, strategic unbundling, how to stop stuffing deals with everything up front and instead orchestrate expansion based on real customer progress. This episode is practical, blunt, and fun. Let's get into it. All right, so Lincoln, good to have you on the show.
Oh, it's good to be here. This is awesome.
Hell yeah. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Oh, man. Well, my name is Lincoln Murphy. I invented customer success, and fast forward, and here we are.
All right, on.
Yeah, very concise. No, I've been working in customer success, customer experience for, we'll cut it off at 15 years. So I don't know how, it goes back maybe further than that. And I've seen a lot of things, and one of the things that I've seen a lot of is when customer success and sales work together, the company grows really fast. And when customer success and sales are not in sync, that's when you have a lot of friction, and that's when things slow down. So it's like, if we can, I think, talking about how to stay in sync, but also how to look at customer success as a growth mechanism and not just, this department that sits over there. They're the killjoys that, don't want sales to do anything cool. And it's just a cost center and all of that. No, that's not the way it should be. And that's not the way it is in a lot of cases. So customer success is a growth mechanism. I have some ideas on that we can talk about today.
I certainly hope we do. And I get where you're going. And I think that that's a common thing. I think it's the same with from pre-sale to sale. Like when marketing and sales work in sync, goes really well. And so the best organizations I've seen, you have the CRO overseeing marketing, sales, and CS, because that way you can kind of oversee the handoff from one to the other. And when marketing, when they're not, sales will look at marketing and be like, marketing sucks. And then marketing will look at sales and be like, they can't close. And same with CS. CS will look at sales and be like, they're handing us projects that nobody can handle. And then sales is like, why can't they just handle my projects? And I think what I love about sales, and I've talked about this on some other episodes, maybe it's a complicated relationship, but sales, and I guess CS as well, oftentimes, there's no other job that's so linearly, you do well, you get paid more. It's so black and white baked into your contract. I'm a big believer in how you incentivize people is how they're going to perform. And you're at ListKit, and I don't know what the structure is over there, but you're a startup, so I can make some assumptions. And I'm thinking, whenever I've been somewhere, you have to really educate your folks on how these things work, because otherwise there are a lot of assumptions. But if I know as a salesperson that, let's say I have some equity stake, I have equity stake and I also have my commission and my base. So if I understand that these accounts need not just to close, but they need to be happy and they need to grow, then if I know how this all flows, I'm rooting for them all to work because it's doing something for me. Where if it's just my commission, there's a chance where I'm like, I don't care how these folks do. I just need to get paid. That's what I'm here to do.
Exactly. So one of the things that comes up a lot is, should sales get paid once on a commission? Should have ongoing sort of monthly commission based on a subscription? I like that aspect of it because I think if it aligns better with that long-term success, it's not just, hit it, split it and quit it. It's, come in and build a long-term relationship. And I think that's really important. But something that I see a lot of is that salespeople will try to, and this isn't the individual salesperson. Often it's cultural. Often it's not just, sometimes it's literally SOP'd, like this is what we're going to do. But you try to overstuff the initial sale, not just to try to get a bigger commission. That's kind of the thing that everybody looks, we're just trying to put so much into that initial sale because we believe because I just need more money. Just give me that money. That's a part of it. But a lot of times why salespeople try to overstuff the initial sale is because they don't trust the post-sale process. They don't trust that there's an ascension path. They don't trust that customer success is going to grow the customer. They don't trust that they're going to get more commission down the road from that customer, if, depending upon the structure, whatever that looks like, or they just don't trust that customer success is going to be able to keep the customer long enough. So they need to get that initial hit, or they're not really going to make any money off this customer. And that trust issue is absolutely huge. And it's the thing that as a customer success leader, like that's what I want to make sure that I sort of bridge that gap. I want to build that trust so that the sales understands that when they give us a customer, we're not just getting that customer and trying to figure out, oh my gosh, how do we not lose them? No, we're getting that customer and we're putting them on that ascension path, and we're going to grow with them and ensure that they are working their way through all of the progress milestones, including the progress milestones that have expansion opportunities associated with them. And we get the customer to that point, and the most logical next step is that they buy this thing and they grow over time, and then they advocate for us. They leave us reviews. There'll be references for us, and that just greases the wheels on the sales side. Like that whole big kumbaya thing is actually possible, but you have to build it. You have to define it. You have to actually, design that. It has to be a process. It doesn't just happen. In fact, when you leave it up to chance, that's when things don't work. Customer success is just over here doing their thing. Sales is over here doing their thing, and there's no trust. It's all about trusting. When you hand over to the next person, whatever that is across the entire customer lifecycle, you need to trust that the other person is going to hold up their end of the bargain. And so that sales to CS handoff, that's all about trust. If we do it right, everybody makes more money.
Well, I also wonder, hear me out on this one. If I'm a salesperson and my mentality is I don't trust CS that they're going to be able to handle this right, I'm probably a salesperson who's been at the company for a while. I probably know the product pretty well. I've probably had some sales that I've taken, handed off, and they didn't go well. Or hell, I'm coming from another company and CS was inept. And this is just like my prejudice against, the pass off in the department. I also imagine that there's a world where because I thought you had a great phrase for this. You were calling it strategic unbundling, where this is a good thing to be doing, where salespeople tend to chunk too much on at once in the initial sale. My hunch is that if I'm chunking too much on the initial sale because I don't trust CS, I'm probably in the top percentage of the salespeople at my company. I'm educated. I know more than just the product. I know the company itself. I imagine there's also a group of people who will sell too much up front. And it has nothing to do with the distrust of CS. It's that they don't know how to sell this thing. They're new to the pitch. They're insecure in what they're offering. And so they're just throwing it all out there and hoping something sticks, rather than overcoming an objection and getting to the bottom of an objection. They're just, they're feature selling. And then the next thing they know, if you have 8 features in the product, they've introduced 6 of them within 30 minutes of meeting this prospect, which obviously is nuts. But when you're a salesperson and you're insecure and you're throwing off your back foot, you flail, you doggy paddle, and this happens. And now coming full circle on this, those folks, they don't know. There's a lack of education, a lack of experience, whatever it is. But if you also educate them not only on this is the sale, but make it a more holistic education on, and this is how it gets passed off. And then this is what we do, and here's our strategy, because this is what we're good at, this is what we're not good at. And some people will come to us with this problem, but really what we're solving is something bigger, and we make them get, if you really teach that proper cycle, that would help them on the sales side, because they would know a little bit more about what they're talking about, as opposed to just maybe they go through an onboarding and they get the surface level of this is what it is. So now they're just speaker boxes, as opposed to being educated consultants on it.
I mean, that's exactly it. Look, the best salespeople connect with the person and understand more about the person. They don't just sit there and pitch features. What we really want on the customer success side, or what we should want. And unfortunately, this isn't the way. I would probably still venture to say most customer success organizations are not run this way. But what I want is that context that you got from the customer, not the functional requirements, not all of that stuff, but that context that you use to build rapport. I want that. I want to understand what the customer is trying to achieve, what their time frame to do that is, the why behind that. That's the stuff that you're using to engage them and ultimately close them. I want that context, because that's the stuff that matters to them. But very often that context is not turned over, right? And so, in our company, we have a Slack channel. It's put a voice memo in there, 2 minutes max. Just give me that context. It's not in the CRM. It's not structured data. I just want to know a couple of things that you talk to them about that were really important to them. So then my onboarding guys can pick that up and have a sort of instant rapport without having the customer repeat themselves. The customers hate 3 things. Customers hate surprises, unknowns, and repeating themselves. And in that handover from sales to onboarding or sales to customer success or whatever, we can usually invoke all three of those things. They have no idea what's going on. They're surprised that they have to do any additional work. And now they have to repeat themselves, right? It's like, wonderful. Welcome aboard. Let's start off on the completely wrong foot. So I want that turnover from sales. And again, I try to make it as easy as possible. Just give me a couple of minutes voice memo. I'll take it from there. But now I have that context, and now the relationship that's already built. There's a little bit of a trust transfer there. Now, even better, the salesperson can make a warm introduction to who's going to be taking over post-sale. So we really do get that trust transfer. It's really interesting. I see this a lot where a customer will go back to the original salesperson when they have an issue. And you're like, why is this happening? Well, especially like right in onboarding, like right at the kickoff, because they don't trust the other people. The only person they trust, they don't even trust the company. They don't even trust the company. They trust the salesperson. So they always go back to them. So one of the things I tell our guys is, hey, if you could, I want you to use that trust that you already built with them to transfer that to customer success. So you say, hey, here's who you're going to be working with. They're awesome. They're going to get you up and running. And you just kind of build them up, like position the customer success person that they're going to be working with, put them on a pedestal. And then all of a sudden, the customer is going into this new person that they're being handed off to that otherwise they might feel like, oh man, I had this great rapport with this person. Now I get to go over here. They're coming into that with a different attitude. Like, oh, so I trust this person. They're telling me to trust this guy. All right, maybe I'm less skeptical. Maybe I have one foot not quite out the door. It just makes things a little bit better. And then if there's ever issues where the customer goes back to the salesperson, it's like the salesperson now has a choice to really either, say to the customer, yeah, you know what, customer success sucks. They're terrible. I don't know why we even have them here. Or to be like, well, clearly something happened that shouldn't have happened. Like, they're awesome. So I'm really, confused about this. Like, they still have that trusting position with the customer that they could elevate customer success. And then behind the scenes and back channels, if there are issues, we hash that out. We figure out what's going on there. Nothing is ever perfect, but we certainly don't want to be in a situation where sales doesn't trust customer success. So excellence in execution post-sale is critical to build that trust. But where it doesn't happen, like the salesperson has that ability to use that trust that they've already built to transfer that to customer success. And I think that's it. If we can do that right, and then we can transfer that context, right after the sale closes, like, we really get to start off on a really strong foot with the customer. And it's those little things. I mean, that's operational to an extent, but like, that's mostly about like psychology and just human behavior and all of that stuff. And shocker, that's really important.
I'm thinking about it, like, because you're right, the handoff is everything. And it's that magic moment of the handoff. And like, you have a running back in football and their job is to run it. The coach never says, all right, we're going to practice the play by the running back, just start with the ball. No, you have to start with the quarterback hand, like kind of a critical piece, right? And there are a couple of things that you said there that sparked some thoughts over on my side. I'm even trying to like think where to begin on this. First, when it comes to the voice note, as opposed to a structured, like you have to write it in Salesforce or HubSpot and there's something. I'm thinking as the salesperson, I always hate that piece because I feel like it's taking this relationship that I have. And at the end of the day, this is a deal. This is a number. This is a business process. But as a salesperson, there is an emotion to it. There was a victory. I overcame something. We came together. Like, it's not quite so simple, And so when I feel like the whole interaction is diluted down into these three questions, I get almost like combative with the questions. And, well, it's this, but it's not real. And they said this, and I want to include more, even if it's not relevant to anything, but it's just to make me feel excited about that pass off. I think that's important to make this, the seller feel good. The downside, obviously, is if it's unstructured, can you utilize the data in any way? And I guess you can, because then if the CS team is taking that voice note and making something of it, you can look and see like what are the most common. They can take that without the salesperson and boil it down to what it needs to be. Take the subjective account and put some objectivity to it. And, I'm even thinking then, going off the one other thing you said was, when the customer will go back to the salesperson and say, how do I do this? When they do that, a part of me, like, I get a little annoyed, like, where is CS? Why am I bothered by this? I'm also a little bit, I feel really good that I really earned this person's trust. And then it'll happen then when they get a great relationship with the CS person And I'll reach out and I'll say, hey, how are things going? And they'll be like, oh, I don't need anything. I'm working with Jim. And I'm like,
You're not needed anymore, sir.
and I hate that because I'm like, why was that was so important? Like, what? Oh my, hey, don't forget, man. Again, this is all nonsense in reality, but there is something to it. And I also love the idea, of talking up the CS person. I've often said listen, it's all storytelling. Like, oh, I'm handing you off to Anne. Anne is my best friend here. Anne is oh my God. If I love working with you, customer, and I made sure I stood up in a meeting and made sure that you were going to Anne. And I always like when the handoff is the salesperson and the CS person, even if they're just a bubble, on the screen, you're there. It shows something. It shows, a care in the handoff. I want to make sure that this went properly. And then to the point where then if something didn't happen, you can always recall that meeting and say, hey, wanted to get everybody together. Customer said that this isn't happening. Obviously, Ann, you're fantastic. I just want to make sure that we're not missing anything because this isn't. And now it's you as the customer, you feel really cared for. Like it's conveying the right things, and it's putting everyone on the rest of the same team as opposed to this adversarial triangle.
That's it right there. And customers don't want to see infighting and all that stuff anyway. And if they're having doubts, all that does is validate these negative feelings they're having about the company.
That even if the product is amazing, it's all one thing to them.
Exactly. That's huge. We see it as, it's product or sales or customer success. No, man, they see it as this is the company and you guys need to get your shit together because something's not working here. So if we understand that, so we talk about processes and workflows and SOPs and whatever, but this comes down to just understanding how the humans that we're working with operate and how do we make that work in our favor as efficiently as possible, because if we do that, then it works in the customer's favor. That's the thing. If this works, our customers have a great experience. And if it works really well, the customers actually achieve the goal that they had signed up to achieve when they first became our customer. So, it's that proverbial and kind of cliche win-win, but that's actually it. If we do this right, everybody really does win. But so I want to make sure we do talk about the strategic unbundling thing, because I think that all of the things we just talked about there, if we do those things right, it leads to this possibility of growing customer lifetime value, generating more revenue from them, which leads to higher customer lifetime value, and doing it in a way that is totally customer centric. So when we talk about strategic unbundling, the idea is oftentimes when we're talking about, you will overstuff that initial sale. Now that could be literally you trying to overstuff it, or just the way we've structured our bundles. They might contain a bunch of features and functionality that make it look super valuable. Oh, this is, that thud factor from, remember, a direct mail guy many, many years ago had talked about the thud factor when you would buy physical information products, and the thud was when they would deliver it to your front porch, it would hit. It's like, oh, I bought something quantity at least. I bought it, so, it's sort of the same thing. For the price that you're going to pay, you're going to get all this stuff, right? And, a lot of that stuff they don't need initially. And this is where things get really interesting, because if you look at that and you go, here's this feature. Now, if every other one of our competitors has that feature in their, as sort of table stakes, then we can't really pull it out because it's for feature parity. And if somebody's, making a checklist, okay, it has to be in there. But if there's a piece of functionality or a feature that doesn't help the customer initially, and they'll need it at some point, but they don't need it right away. Okay. And it doesn't hurt us, from a competition standpoint, then we can take that out of that initial bundle, or we can just not add it in when we're trying to create this, super valuable list of things. We can hold it back. Okay. And this is not something that I'm holding back from the customer that's going to, damage them in any way. They don't need it right now. They couldn't use it even if they had it, because it requires, maybe other data to be in place, other settings and workflows and stuff to be there. So they can't even use it. So I hold that back, give them that initial bundle. They love it. Everything's good. Feature parity with competitors, a couple of extra things that set us aside or set us apart. Awesome. Okay, cool. Close the deal. But as we're closing the deal, we mention there's this other thing that most companies, when they reach this particular milestone, and we wouldn't say milestone, we would say something that actually matters to them. So let's say I sell a CRM and I have an AI auto dialer system or something. You don't need that right away. In fact, you can't even use it right away. All of our competitors None of them have that as their sort of their baseline offering. So I hold that back. And as we're going to close, I say, by the way, we have an AI auto dialer that most of my customers that are trying to do what you're trying to do or that are similar to you, they will add that once they've closed about 20 deals through our system. Because what that means is that once you've closed that many deals, like that means the workflows and business rules and everything are set up and everybody's is like comfortable with everything and you're good to go. You don't need it right now. In fact, you couldn't use it right now if you had it. So, don't worry about it. But when you close your 20th deal, we'll talk about adding it to your account. But you don't need it right now. But we'll talk about it then. Is that fair? Yeah. That's actually the most fair thing I've heard all day. You just told me you have something you could try to sell me, but you're not going to because I'm not ready for it. Okay, I trust you a little more than maybe I did. So then if we do things right, we work them through the process and they get close to closing their 20th deal. And we say, hey, remember, you're coming up on closing your 20th deal. That's when most customers that want to accelerate or whatever the pitch is, that's when we talk about adding this to their account. And by orchestrating it, that's what I call it, is orchestration. By doing that earlier in the life cycle, including it during close, you're also getting them to think about any budgets or whatever that might be and might be needed for that later on. But here's the secret. So we get to that point, they've closed 20 deals, and I present them with this AI auto dialer. Right now, this piece of functionality is so much more valuable from a perception standpoint because they're ready for it, because they've closed 20 deals through the system and they want to accelerate. And I could probably sell this to them now for 10x what I could have sold it to them at the beginning, which they wouldn't even have bought it because they didn't need it. Or especially if I had just included it in the bundle, like it would have just been in there and it would have been lost. And maybe they never even got to the point of activating it. And then at renewal, they actually look at all the stuff they have and they go, man, there's so much stuff in here that we're not paying for. I don't even need that. So, let's get rid of it. But by orchestrating this, I get them to that point where buying this add-on it's the most logical next step. And whoever's handling that, we do that in customer success, actually, most of the time. Like that's just our role, is to get them to that point and then have that discussion. And then we'll just activate it and add it to their account. Now, if it has to go back to the original salesperson, that's fine too. It's still based on the customer's actual progress though. So whoever closes it isn't the point. But this is actually a way to make your customer success people a really significant revenue driver without making them salesy at all. Because this is not a sales conversation. I told you about it. You're ready for it. Should I add it to your account? And I will tell you a secret. If a customer wants to negotiate or anything, I say, absolutely. I can send you back to your original salesperson. And they'll be like, oh, no, it's okay. It's okay, just add it to the account. Not that they don't like their salesperson, but they don't necessarily want to go through that process, right? Not an us versus them thing, but where we have leverage, let's use it, right? So we get to that point where they buy. And now that thing that we could have included in the initial bundle, or we could have tried to sell as an add-on early in the life cycle, maybe we could have gotten a couple $100 a month for it, but now maybe we get $1,000 a month for it. That's the strategic unbundling aspect. But it requires that your customer success operation is dialed in, and that we're not just dialed in to make the upsell, but we're dialed in to get the customer to reach that milestone that has the expansion opportunity associated with it. It also requires trust from sales to not try to overstuff that initial sale, because if they don't trust that customer success is going to be able to deliver on that, then they're going to try to include that in the initial sale, maybe try to bump the price up a little bit. But again, the customer's not going to see a ton of value in that because it's not something they can use right now. So you take it out, present it at the right time, you can get 5-10x the price for it. It's pretty wild.
It's brilliant what you're saying. And the capitalist in me is wondering, well, if you close them at a higher value and with more products up front, does that, forget about customer satisfaction, does that translate to more revenue, whatever? And I think, I'm sure if you look at the time frame, I'm sure it does. But if you are factoring in obviously the customer satisfaction in a real way, you're going to keep those customers and grow them longer. It's going to be a more solid, customer base, more substantial customer base. Like there's someone I was talking to today, we were talking about businesses, and he's like, I'm a big fan of grow slow. Like that's how the faster it goes up, the faster it goes down, grow slow. So if you're trying to chunk everything on and keep that revenue, and then maybe they're not using this, and then they forget it's there, and you get those residual renewals. All right, that is money that's not to be ignored. But if you really hone in, and we had a great conversation with another guest on the show about this, where everything in a line is what's best for the customer. the business is going to do really well. Like your product is going to get really, and then to that point, I'm wondering, is there a world where if the company really believes this, where you incentivize salespeople where, for example, let's say you have a flagship product. If you sell that, you get, call it 10% commission. If you sell that and another product, you're only getting 8% commission. And you de-incentivize a higher upfront sale, but then maybe they get a cut as it goes farther down the line, like a higher cut based on what you initially sold as it goes down the line, where again, what you're incentivized to do is gonna drive your behavior.
100%. I love that. And yeah, because if it's, so going back to the, will it be less revenue? I mean, a lot of these things, obviously, I mean, every situation is going to be different, but in a lot of cases, we can get a customer to the point where they're going to need this add-on, let's say 3 to 6 months. Well, if I'm adding, if I was able to, I don't want to do math live, but if I was able to, increase the price a couple $100 a month by having this feature included in the initial deal, but 3 months later, I can add this thing in, and it's, instead of a couple $100 a month, I've increased what they're paying by $1,000 a month. It doesn't take long for even the 3 months where we had less revenue to like quickly be made up for. And then, the value of the customer goes up significantly. So, it's not one thing I hear a lot, either overtly or just the impression that I get, is that customer success and the growth associated with customer success is slow. So to your point, I like what you're saying about growing slow. It makes sense. You do some crazy highs are often met with crazy lows. Totally. That said, slow is relative. And I think with customer success, the idea, the impression that people have is like, oh, you're talking long-term here. We're talking in a year, they'll renew and then they'll grow. Like, no, man. If I can get a customer to the point where this thing becomes the most logical next step for them to add this to their account, then I can do that in 3 months. I'm going to do that in 3 months. And if I can get, and this is a really cool thing, I can get a customer to buy more from me like 2 or 3 times in 1 year. If I look at just basing this on their progress and what are the logical expansion opportunities associated with that. But think about this. Nobody, no sales manager or no account management leader is going to go in and say, hey guys, let's, like I have a mandate that we upsell a customer 3 times a year. Nobody's going to do that. And nobody's even going to, like, that's ridiculous. But if we understand the customer's actual progression and we map out at what points buying something more makes sense, like it's logical, you may very well get to a point where you are upselling a customer 2 or 3 times in 1 year, getting the value of that customer to grow maybe exponentially. And people have pushed back on that and we're like, oh, you're being, hyperbolic is how people say things to me, passive aggressive. And shut the fuck up, Lincoln. Okay. But it's not hyperbolic. This isn't theory. This is what I've seen. This is what I've done. But if you don't believe me, just like map out, what do you have to sell to customers? At what point is it logical for them? What are you putting in that initial bundle that you could pull out that you could present later and have it be worth 5 to 10x? Like that's the simple little thought experiment. Go do that. And then come back to me and tell me that I'm being hyperbolic.
Well, especially if you're mapping out from the beginning of like, welcome aboard. Now you're not ready for this, but like, this is going to really benefit and I'm going to let you know when it would. You're setting the proper tone and then it doesn't feel like you're being upsold, as much. You're on a journey. I'll give you this. We have a Costco in my town and I have a Costco membership. And like, man, I'll tell you, when I got a Costco card and now I'm living in the suburbs, I'm like, yeah, like, I guess I'm at that stage in life. Like that really put the seal on. But so anyway, we get this Costco membership. We're using it for a year. And there's like a member level above what we have. And with that level, you can go into this, like, I think our store opens at like 9:30, but with the higher level, you can go in at 9 or like 8:30, which is like really helpful. If I'm dropping off the kids at school, I can pick something up and head back home. It's really annoying if I have to go like in the middle of the day. And so I go in and it's like, oh, your subscription is go up to like renew. And I go up and the people at the counter say, okay, let's see if you're eligible for the higher level. And they they type something in and they go, nope, actually, you haven't spent enough here, like for this to be worthwhile for you. It wouldn't, like you would, like it's not. And I thought that was so, like, it made me like Costco more, it made me trust them more. And then as I hear more about their business model, how they never take more than a certain margin, it's that end customer in mind. I absolutely like them more. And then I said, like, well, what's the difference in what I spent versus, and now I'm arguing to get the card. Like, what's the difference in what I spent versus what the amount is? And they're like, well, you spent like $75 under what this is. And I'm like, I'd rather spend $75 just to be able to go into that store earlier for a whole year.
Can I give you money out of my pocket right now?
And then I'm like, and then they did it. I'm like, all right, can I shop now? And they're like, go for it. Great. So it reminds me of that, where you said it properly. And when you say, no, I don't think so, it creates a trust and it creates a desire that you're not, it's like a reverse psychology.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've literally put something out that's aspirational. I always try to give the caveat that this is probably not going to be the case for most people. But every once in a while, I've run into situations where we've done this orchestration. We've presented something to a customer and we've taken it back. You're not ready for it right now. And we say, but this is when you're going to be ready. And again, you want to get as specific as possible. So they said, you didn't spend $75 under. Now you have a goal, right? Now you know what you need to do. And so having that very clearly laid out, the customer is paying attention to those things. We've had some situations where customers come back to their CSM and say, hey, using the example, we just closed our 20th deal. Can we get that AI, before we could even reach out? And that definitely happens. And it's not the most common thing, but when it does,
you're being hyperbolic, Lincoln.
Like I said, I try to temper reality. It's not going to happen all the time, but it does happen and it's really cool. And if you think about it, it's that exact Costco moment. So it happens. This is the other thing. People don't believe that happens, but we've all probably experienced something like that. And so it's like, if you can just relate that to something that has happened in your life, how did that feel? Oh, okay. You could do that for your customer.
When I'm working with sales folks, I kind of push for, I'll give you this. My favorite opening line, and this is no secret, when you get on a sales call is, why are we talking today? Very brashly, why are we talking today? And when I tell a salesperson that, most of the time they say, I'll listen to a call the next week and they say, so what were you hoping to learn? And I'm like, no. Why are we talking? I want you to be brash because it puts them a little bit on their heels as opposed to making them feel so in control. And they said, most of the time they'll say, well, we just want to learn, more about you, which is that's obviously such bullshit. Oh, you just wanted to learn about this weird software. It's a weird hobby. You're only going to do this if there's a problem. And they say, so listen, all right, you want to learn, but I can't help you unless I know what's going on. And the customer tends to get annoyed and they say, well, why can't you just tell me? And I love then pivot and say, listen, here's the deal. My job right at this moment is to figure out if you even need this or not. Because if you don't need this, there's no point in me giving a 45-minute discussion on what we do, only for you to be like, we didn't need that from the beginning. So I want to know if you need this or not. And if you don't need this, I'm going to kick you out of here. I'm going to send you on your way. I'd rather definitely not sell somebody who doesn't need this. So tell me what's going on. And then in a way, they start pitching you as to why, they'll say, well, fine, this is happening. You'll say, well, I don't know if you need this because of that. Well, I don't know. What about you start looking for why they don't need it? And they start, no, please, 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 please. And now you've totally flipped the whole situation on its head, and really put yourself in control.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of, and I don't know, you're starting to call it reverse psychology or something, but it's really just kind of just getting to what they really need from this. And exactly what that is. But it's interesting because on the customer success side, we do the same thing. And I think a misconception is that customer success is about making customers happy. It is not. In fact, and I'm never going to be aggressive with the customer, I'm never going to be mean, but very often I have to push a customer out of their comfort zone. I have to try to get them out of their own way. I have to try to get them to do what they need to do to be successful, which means if I fall into people-pleasing mode, we're all done here. And so it's not always going to make the customer happy. Sometimes they're going to be annoyed or even upset. And, my favorite tactic, and, I get customers kind of yelling, and I'll just sit there and they keep yelling. And then eventually they either trail off or they go, where'd you go? And I go, oh, I'm just waiting for you to be done. Are you done? Okay, now let's, that is not what is taught in customer success training. It's all about appease the customer, make them happy. That's not going to get the result that the customer needs. And they might leave happy and then they leave.
Appeasement never works. We've learned this in history. We learned all of it. And it's the same in sales, where a salesperson will say they get weak. And they'll, you'll get in the beginning of a conversation of oh, well, our business is heading under because we have this problem and it seems your software could fix this. And you give them a pitch and they're like, wow, that's amazing. Wow, that's amazing. This could save our entire business. And then you say, all right, do you want to sign up? And the person will go you know what? I want to talk to my intern about it. And then the salesperson will be like, I totally get it. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, you have to say no. It's your response. If you know that this can help them, it is your responsibility to get them to do it. And if you know it can't help them, it's your responsibility to kick them out. That's a good salesperson. And it's the same in CS. If we're here to appease these people, that's not a business. It's not how it runs. And I'll say another interesting thing. Whenever I talk to salespeople who are like getting burned out of sales, or they're like sales is rough. It's a lot of rejection. It's a lot of like work. It's a lot of work. And it's like, I wonder if sales is for me. I wonder if maybe I'd be, better in like customer success. I'm like, you don't get it. Like, it's the same thing. And they think, well, I like people, and well, they've already been sold. So I'm just the good news bearer. And it's like, no, you're going to another sales role.
It's so interesting. Actually, I had this realization recently where I'm like, I think in customer success, we've been optimizing around the most insane thing. Think about this. We have built operations, we've built teams and really complex org structures and systems and blah, 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 to try to get our customer to do the things they need to do to be successful, to do the things they can't do, don't want to, have no desire to do. Oh, and by the way, to do that perfectly, to execute excellently. Because in other words, if they don't do that, they're not going to get the results they want, right? So they need to do that. So we nudge them, we train them, we do everything. It's wild when you think about that. Like, that's what customer success really is. I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just, that's the reality. We've created an operation trying to get customers to do the things that they need to do. And that kind of sent me down this path of, well, I mean, that's not to go completely off topic, but I mean, that's where like AI actually gets us to a point where we can do more for the customer than we ever could. And bridging that gap between where, even the product stops and what they need to do. Like, we can build tools, like the CS team can build tools to get them there. That gives us a lot more control over the outcome and requires us to rely on the customer less, for the customer to rely on the customer less to get the results they're looking for. But it's just really interesting if you think about that. Like, at least it was to me, it like blew my mind. Like, I think we've done everything wrong in customer success because I mean, not, like, that's the clip, by the way, of me just completely shutting down customer success. But the idea is just, it's really crazy when you think about it, like what we're trying to do here. And so to that extent, I mean, it's a little bit different than sales, which at least, not to say that it's easy and not complex and doesn't require a lot of work. It does, to your point. But you take that and you take customer success and you sort of increase it like tenfold, and it's just all sorts of craziness. And it absolutely comes down to, the customers very often getting in their own way. So we have to be very specific, very deliberate, and sometimes more assertive than we would normally be comfortable with. Not aggressive. Again, never trying to be that guy, but sometimes you need to push back on a customer who's, crashing out. One of the things, so I do jujitsu, and the fact that hasn't come up yet is pretty incredible, because as someone who does jujitsu, I'm obligated to mention it multiple times. One of the things that we do, so I've been doing it a long time. And so, like, somebody new will come in, and I do what's called no-gi jujitsu, which is more like wrestling. We don't wear the pajamas. Also, you don't wear belts. So you don't know, you just see somebody, and once you sort of lock up with them, you get some idea of how, what their experience is. But every once in a while you get some guy that comes in real strong, athletic, and you're like, okay, I'm trying to gauge this guy. But eventually you realize, okay, he doesn't really have the skills. And so you get behind him and you get him in a choke. Now, what will happen when somebody comes in for the first time and they're starting to get choked is they will panic, because, probably a weird position, probably something they haven't been in a while or ever. And yeah, and they're like tapping on you. So there's two things that you can do in that situation. One, and by the way, in jiu-jitsu, just to baseline this, when someone taps out, it means that they're in pain or they can't get out of the hold. And we always respect that. If you don't respect that, there's always going to be someone bigger, better, and stronger than you that's going to show you why you should respect that. We call them the mat enforcer. Like, you're not going to get away with that. Also, just don't be a dick. We respect that, right? But when you're working with somebody new, you have two choices. One, you can be like, oh, this is a new guy off the street. I'm going to beat him up. I'm going to show him why getting a free trial here was a bad idea. Unfortunately, there are some people like that. But for me, if I'm able to get, a choke on him, and I realize that he doesn't know how to get out of it, and he's panic tapping, I'm only going to partially respect that. I'm going to let up. So I've let up, but I'm going to say, I'm not going to let you out of this completely, because I want you to learn how to deal with it. I want you to learn how to fight out of it. Because if I just let you go, you didn't learn anything. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to keep it in, but I'm going to show you how to hand fight. I'm going to show you how to get your hands in there and start moving, at least reducing the pressure. And It's the same thing we need to do with our customers. Because if they're coming in and they're not getting results immediately, and it wasn't anything that anybody did to mismanage their expectations, but it's just the way it is. They come in, they heard, selective hearing or whatever, they have their own expectations, and they're like, I'm not getting the results. I want out. I want to cancel. This sucks. You guys are terrible. It's like, do I just say, okay, you're right, and let you go? Or do I not respect the panic tap and be like, listen, we can let off the pressure here a little bit, whatever that means. Maybe we extend their billing, maybe we do something, or maybe we just give them some space to vent, let them talk. They say, all right, you didn't sign up to give up, right? You signed up to get results. You are a couple of weeks into this or whatever, it's like whatever the situation, but in a lot of cases, it's like usually early on, it's like, you haven't given this enough time. You haven't given this enough energy. You haven't done the things that we all agreed that you would do. So if you want to cancel, you can cancel, but my job is to not let you give up. I want to teach you how to get out of this. I want to work with you to get out of this or whatever. So I don't respect the panic tap when I'm working with new people, but obviously not in a way that I'm going to do anything bad. I'm going to teach them how next time somebody gets a choke on you, that it's not, you don't have to tap, you can fight out of it. And then eventually I'm going to show you how to not get your back taken, not get choked out, like avoid that. But if I let you quit and you walk away and you never come back, you'll never learn those things.
I think that's an unbelievable analogy. You're really training your customer in a way. So I think parallel to sales, like as we're saying, like you got to figure out, can you help them? And if you can, it's on you to make them make the right decision. If you let them walk and this was really dumb, they really could have benefited from this. Like that's being really crappy. I'm thinking like, I remember my dad when I was like in kindergarten taught me to ride a bike and it was so fun. I loved it. And then the next spring comes around, you go all winter without riding it. He goes, all right, here's the bike. And I get on it, I fell. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. And like credit to my dad, he's like, absolutely not. You get back on that. And I'm screaming and I'm crying, but like, it's the kind of thing where same here at sales CS, like I know better than you. And I know that I know better than you. I can't let you be the one leading and calling the shots here. Otherwise this is bad for you. And I think that's probably, just like yourself in jiu-jitsu, it's a better person, that's a better salesperson. It's a better CS, like where I'm taking the unpopular opinion, but I know it's the right thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you let your customers, like I said all the time, if you let them get in their own way and just make a decision that's going to be bad for them. So the example you gave earlier, the customer says, this is going to save my business. And then says, but I need to talk to my intern about it. And the salesperson says, oh, I totally get it. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm here if you need me. They go away and the salesperson's like, well, I can't wait to close that deal. This is going to work out, right? Of course it's not. And you've just let that customer go away without actually doing the thing that they told you would save their business. How can you let them walk away when they just said, this is the difference between their business continuing and their business failing? So to me, that's your responsibility. When someone says that, it's like, unless there's a valid reason for you not to sign up today, like we need to get going because you just said this is going to save your business. And then if they say, oh, well, I didn't mean it like that. You're like, well, then what's going on here?
You know better than they do. And I similarly, like we got to the point of, you need this, you get that. Let me show you how it works. All right, here's the price. Let's get you signed up. And every single time when that happens, they'll go, oh, wait a minute, I need to. And it's just like that tap. They're flailing. It's a kick reflex. They're not being logical. They're just kicking. And you need to recognize the difference between that reflex kick and what's a real back off, let me go. And that takes confidence. That takes time. It takes seeing it, a whole lot to really understand.
Exactly. But it's valid. There are times where, if I had somebody and I was trying to do that thing, he's like, no, just let me go. I'm like, okay, yeah, absolutely. But the vast majority of the time when that works, they're like, thank you for showing me. Like I got scared. I freaked out. I was panicking. Like, man, I got you. And I've taught them so many things just in that moment, like just the jiu-jitsu analogy, like this is a safe space. Like we're not here to hurt each other. We're here to learn, we're here to grow. And I always tell the trial guys, I'm like, you're coming back tomorrow, right? It's not my business. This isn't why am I the one working with the trial guys? But it's not about the business. It's about them. Like you're going to come back, right? I'm going to see you in the next class, right? Because I want to make sure that they're not being like, oh, I just got beat up, and I feel bad. I'm like, dude, you're going to get beat up. You're going to get beat up until you don't. And then you'll be like, oh, I'm really good. And then you're going to get beat up some more.
Yeah. Like, listen, you're going to spend on this thing. Yeah, that's how it goes, but you're going to benefit from. All right. So believe it or not, we're at time here, but I got a funny thing so I play hockey and I talk about that constantly. And I had a game last night and we were in the locker room with this big Slovakian guy and he was talking about like Kodiak bears and how they have them in like zoos in Eastern Europe and how bears are becoming like a problem. And he turns and he says to us, he goes, do you know what you do if you run into a bear in the woods? Nothing. The bear's going to do everything.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry. The bear will take care of everything.
That's amazing. I love it.
All right, Lincoln, this was awesome. We got to have you back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. This was great, man.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Closing Conversations. Big thanks to Lincoln Murphy for coming on and saying the quiet part out loud. Customer success isn't here to be nice. It's to drive outcomes. And when sales and CS trust each other, everybody wins, especially the customer. If you liked this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and send it to a sales leader or a CS leader who's living through a messy handoff right now. For more on building sales teams that deliver and the systems around them, visit www.commissionsales.com. We'll see you next time. And until then, let's get closing. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget, you can always catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for more episodes of Closing Conversations.